showcase sponsored by the wonderful flute specialists about my invention, the Glissando Headjoint. And there it is. Now the Glissando Headjoint is a regular flute head joint inside of a carrier tube. Now the ornamental part of, where the crown is, has been removed, but inside, so there are two tubes. There's this one inside, that's the real head joint. The outside tube is just the carrier tube. And so, don't be alarmed to see the space here. It makes room for the head joint to slide. Now, when you're in home base and the slide is all the way in, you have a regular flute. And this is a very high quality head joint. It is based on the Brannan modern cut and with a few tiny little tweaks. And I developed this with the help of three wonderful flute maker friends. It was Eva Kingma in Holland, made the very first prototypes. Then I worked with a guy in Zurich, Switzerland when I was living there, Kaspar Becki. And finally, the wizard himself, Bigford Brannan, is the one who perfected this incredibly elegant design. So now, the range of the glissandi, this distance stays the same. So depending on the length of air, the length of the glissandi changes. So with a short length of air, is a major third possible, and with the longest length of air, a major second. And just as our friends who play on the string instruments and on the trombone, with some practice, you can learn where all the notes are. So for example, when you want to make a downwards glissandi, let's say that you want to go from F to D. So you would start on an F, all the way in, and pull out until you got to D. If you wanted to make a glissando from D to F, you would start on the fingering of the arrival note, pulled out to the departure note. So to play D to F, you finger a D. You finger from D to F, you finger an F, and then pulled out to D. Now, if let's say you wanted to do an E flat to F, well, you just have to know where E flat was on the slide. And we really got to use our ears, but that's what they're for. So now the Glissando Headjoint opens up worlds of expression that the regular flute has a lot of trouble doing. The Western flute tradition is the only flute tradition on the planet that does not have glissandi in it. And so when you want to visit the music from other parts of the world, and we are surrounded by rock and roll and blues And those styles are all loaded with glissando. And so, up to this time, most of the music played on the Glissando Headjoint has been improvised by people, but there are more and more and more compositions in print. And at this point, there's over 100 of them, so there actually is a repertoire out there. And I am busy commissioning pieces and writing pieces. In fact, right here today, I'm going to premiere, the world premiere, of 3 short pieces that have never been heard by, well, they've been heard by one person before. And so, now, the Glissando Headjoint can be fitted to virtually every flute. It is a head joint. You don't have to modify your flute. The tenon size is 0.016, which is the standard size these days for silver flutes. However, these head joints have been fitted to gold flutes very many times. You have to sand it down, but the flute technicians do that great. And it comes in its own case, somewhere on the case. Here. So you get the Glissando Headjoint in a case. The head joint never requires lubrication. It has inside of it 2 little seals to keep it airtight, and these are Delrin, which is a inert, what's called a self-lubricating plastic. So there's no chemical anything coming into you, and if it ever gets a little dirty, the magic solution, I've done this on mine a few times, you put 1 drop of dish detergent right there, put it under the sink, put it into the water, and just go back and forth, and then put it in the dish rack and let it dry out. It's really simple. So, and the simpler one, we keep things really the better. Now, there are other things that are completely new in flute too. You know, there have been some glissandi. I mean, we can do some with our fingers. But with the Glissando Headjoint, that change in tone color, you can keep your full sound. And of course, you can combine them both and get that kind of gluey sound that you get from the finger vibrato, and combine that with the full voice when you can get with the Glissando Headjoint. Now, something that has never been possible before, and there's apparently no precedent for this in the whole history of the flute, is the multiphonic slide. And then, when you start exploring it, you'll find these amazing things that, when I conceived of it, I had a lot of ideas about what it would do, and when I finally had a prototype that worked, there they were. But then there was all this other stuff. So here, for example, is a double glissando where one voice is trilling and the other isn't. Bottom, and some of the projects coming up are collections of transcriptions of folk music from Asia. For example, the Chinese erhu, that music is loaded with slides. And the project has begun and the transcriptions are working. And within the next year, there's going to be quite a few publications of new stuff. And in the meantime, if I can introduce Melissa Keeling for a second. Yes, you, stand up. This is Melissa Keeling. She has written a basic practice book for the Glissando Flute, and it's called The Glissando Flute. Right. It's approved from the depths of the mind. Glissando Flute. So, I'm also working on studies, and well, in fact, this might be a good moment for some questions. Does anyone have any questions? I was this master class with Julius Baker many years ago, and he said, this morning I feel like I got all the answers, and nobody's asking any questions. So, yes.
So how does that thing that you just did where one note is filling in the other note, how does that work?
So the question was, in case you didn't hear it, is the demonstration that Robert just gave, how you can trill one note and have the other note just sustained. Trilling one note, but having one note just sustained.
Yes. And the question is, how does one do that?
How does one do that?
Okay. Well, every musician, which includes flutists, every musician should have a basic working knowledge of two sciences: acoustics, the nature and behavior of sound, and the strangely named psychoacoustics, which is not acoustics at the Bates Motel. It is the nature and behavior of human hearing. And most flutists don't actually understand how this thing works or why it is the way it is. And I would recommend very strongly the book by Theobald Bohm himself, The Flute and Flute Playing. And your understanding of the flute will be enormously developed if you read that. Now, you've all seen pictures of little sound waves, right? There's the straight line, which represents 0, and then there's the positive pressure, the negative pressure. Well, at the place where the wavy line crosses the straight line, that represents no energy happening at all. There's no vibration at that spot. So now, at this overtone, there's nothing going on under the A key. Now, when we overblow, now you combine them with multiphonic technique, and if you don't know about that, the great place to start are these videos I've got up on YouTube. There's one called Your First Multiphonic, and there's another one called The 3 Types of Multiphonics, because there are 3 types. And then also, if I may, I highly recommend my book, Tone Development Through Extended Techniques, which will give you a basic working knowledge of the extended techniques used most, and it will really, those exercises will really improve your tone. So using multiphonic technique, So now, if we use the natural harmonic system, and you can play the flute in octaves, and one of the things that would help the flute a lot moving into other styles, playing the music of the violin, for example, is to thicken the sound. Why is the audience not loving the flute like we do? It's not because they're bad people, well, some of them, but it's because of the unrelenting thinness of the sound. So if we were to develop the sound more, we would attract more people to our music. Think about what those rock and roll guitar players do. They spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours working on their sound for every tune. And most flutists are just playing with their regular tone. So now, about an hour and a half ago, I performed my transcription of a Paganini caprice, which predated the Glissando Headjoint, so I played it on a regular flute, but Shazam to it. Okay, so now, yes.
Are there different brackets you would have to like attach for someone with like a wider face, or do those bend?
So the questioning is, with the wings on the head joint, are they adjustable to accommodate
Yes,
different size faces?
That's an excellent question, and you know, we haven't been doing this for 2 years. A little rusty would be one of the first things. These are surgical steel. They can be bent many times. Everyone who gets a Glissando Headjoint spends the first couple of weeks, you know, finding just the right place, because one size does not fit all. I mean, if you look around this room, you see so many different physiologies, and so you want to find a place where you can use the head joint without it. It doesn't feel like it's going like that, but you don't want it tight. And so when you bend it, put one finger here at its base and just bend it that way, or bend it this way. And ideally, you want to be able to pick it up and kind of like not know it's there. You know, I can feel it a little bit, but basically I'm just really playing the flute. And so yes, everybody does that adjustment. What else have I forgotten after 2 years? Well, it'll come to mind. Okay, so anyway, I have written a collection of short, not that hard to play pieces, although when I play the third one, you might say, well, it's not a little hard. And the collection is going to be called Lights in the Sky, and one of the pieces is called Lights in the Sky. And I'm going to play 3 of them. The easiest one of all, which is simply the D minor pentatonic melody. Then there's a little performance piece called What? And lastly, there's a piece called Strut, and it is a hard rock strut, complete with shredding, and I've dedicated it to Melissa Keelan. Okay, so here we go. This is the slow, soulful pentatonic melody. What? What? Where? When? How? Why? Really? It's not so easy to believe. Tell me again. What? This is under my head. I'm sorry. It just can't be true. At least I'm not. What? Why? Why? Where? When? How? Why? What? I just don't get it. Now, as I play this hard rock strut, this can work at quite a few different tempi. So figure out the speed you can do the shredding, and then back up and start it there. communicated with you. For those of you who haven't composed, one of the things you do, I always go, I sure hope anybody likes this. And any composer who assumes that the music is going to be liked is in trouble. So, you know, they really are. So, now, other questions? Yes?
So, on the music, is it like the written note that you finger, or is it what it sounds like? Because when you slide it, it's not the same note that you finger, right?
So the question is, when you compose your music, what you're scoring and writing, is it the actual notes, or is it what you think the notes should sound like?
Those are actually kind of the same thing. I mean, what the notes will sound like are the notes. But the process, I don't think I've ever written two pieces with exactly the same process. And so, like these three pieces, the pentatonic melody began simply because I thought writing a really beautiful, simple melody, which does involve the challenge of making sure that you're moving the head joint and getting things in tune. And putting it in a very clear, easy to hear context. And I just wanted to write a beautiful melody. And most melodies of this kind of nature, I did something very traditional. It starts slow, it works its way up, and then it comes back down. And the arch is one of the classic musical forms. I don't know how exactly the first what happened, but I was working on something and there was some noise or something, and I went, what? Oh, okay, there it is. What? What? Why? And then for the rock piece, I thought, well, I want to write a rock piece, and so coming up with a really good riff is the essence of it. Nobody was better than that, say, than Jimmy Page or Led Zeppelin, and so. I mean, it's super simple, but that'll stay in your head for quite a while, and then just building on that. And part of the practice process, of course, is not missing. You don't want to go. Whoops. And also, working with the glissando headjoint will improve your musicality enormously because it ups the game with your hearing. Now, my biggest problem with how the flute is taught in the classical Western tradition is that so much of it is done as an exercise for the eye. Like there's the note on the paper, right? We go twink into your eye, and then your brain becomes command and control center. Lips, are you at the ready? Yes, we are. Okay, fingers in position, check, boss. Okay, lungs on the case, here we go. 3, 2, 1, fire. And out out it comes. And so only then do we hear it and decide if it's okay, and that is too late. Now, what's supposed to happen, and it's easy to say, but it's a process to get there. It's a process I went through myself, because I started playing just exactly the way I described, which was, you see the note, it still goes patoink into the eye, but then inside your head there is a sound, da, and because there is a sound, things happen, and suddenly other people can hear it too. Now, the change, there's no preferences panel. It's going to be gradual. And the first thing I did when I realized that I really had to make this change, and you know, my musical education was here in the United States. The French system, where you have a solfège class every day, would have been very helpful. But you know, and I was a basic American student, which meant I cut all those classes. And so, if I had known that I was going to be sitting at home years later doing it by myself, I would have thought, you know, maybe I should have actually showed up. So, but I decided that I was going to play slowly enough to pre-hear one note ahead. So if I was going to play, I don't know, a B flat minor 7th chord. Okay, as I'm playing the B flat, do, 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 do. Now, I missed a lot, and I corrected the mistakes, and gradually the corrections got smaller and smaller. And I decided that it was time to go pre-hear 2 notes ahead, and then 3, and then a measure. But it's a process, and you know, so often people present the finished product, and to a student you go like, I could never do that. I could just never do that. And well, and I know as a student, I hated it when people were just pontifical. You must play beyond the music. And I was thinking, well, okay. You're beyond the music now. So, because, you know, I mean, yeah, it's a great idea, but how do you do it? So, and the Glissando Headjoint is a really, really big help for doing that. So, for example, like the strut was in E minor, so learning the E minor pentatonic scale. So, okay, so now E to G, and G to E, G to A to G, B to A to B, B to D, and just practicing that, and it's amazing the effects it will have on your hearing in other things as well. Yes?
The octave, are there different cuts to it, ovals, and?
The question is, the embouchure hole, is it universally the same, or are there different cuts available?
The Glissando Headjoint comes in one very hip model. One of the things I've striven to do is make it affordable. And to do that, things have been simplified. So the Glissando Headjoint costs $1,600. And for a fully professional instrument, that's well below the cost of most regular head joints. There have been people who've had their person, tweak the embouchure hole if they wanted, but this is a very, very, very good head joint. And I play entire concerts on it, and when I'm not using the slide, I'm just playing it. And so, I mean, even the stuff that you gotta have a good head joint for. Whoops. There are a lot of head joints that will really do battle with you if you want to try to play that multiphonic. And so maybe in the future there'll be other models, but right now they're not all exactly the same. And so people do find, if you try several, you'll find one that you like more than the others. But there are not a whole bunch of options. There are no platinum risers and no gold and all of that. And who knows, perhaps in the future. But right now, this is what it is, and it works really well. The outer tube, now the tube inside is solid silver, and the outer carrier tube is plated nickel silver because it's lighter and it's stronger. And I'm playing on a new one today because it's nice and shiny, but the one I perform on, number 21, I picked out in 2011, and I've been playing on it ever since, because I just want to see, like, how far will it go? Will there ever be any problems? Well, 13 years later, 11 years later, miracle of arithmetic, there have been no problems at all. So you don't have to worry about anything wearing out. And if anything ever happens, there are replacement parts. And, instruments can be repaired, and of course, Flute Specialist is the spot. So, any other questions? Yes.
I frequently play with rock and blues groups back at home, and I mic with a pickup that I attach to my flute. How do you suggest miking the Glissando Headjoint?
Well, when I play amplified, I use a headset mic, and I have it here. And I also like the headset mic, which then goes to your little belt pack, and then it's wireless to avoid the disasters that can happen. And it also lets you, during the sound check, walk out into the house and hear, the engineer say, "Oh, it's fine," and you walk out there and find out if it really is fine. And it makes sense to learn some engineer speak. Be one of them, and then things will go better. And so the other thing is you can change flutes without the, and the headset I have has a little gooseneck, and so I do have some option of moving it away and moving it in for presence. The ones that are always in the same position, you're stuck with that degree of presence, and there's nothing you can do to change it. Yes?
I have a question. This piece is very beautiful. And I would like to know if you would perform this, for example, in Germany, would you use German? I mean, would you agree that somebody speaks in a different language than English, for instance?
Well, what do I, well, my,
No, because I have friends. I have one of his head joints. It's amazing. It is amazing. I love it. But I'm not asking for repertoire, that's. And so I was asking what you would like.
In all honesty, I could not give this talk in French or in German.
Okay, okay.
I could make up a language, but aside more, so but and you know, I have a basic vocabulary in German, and I can do some flute teaching in German, but luckily, with English and some help, can usually work. I couldn't actually stand up and do an effective master class by myself in French. I would need help. Help me. Okay, any other questions? Well, we have a minute here, and do we have any, I have some alcohol pads. If anyone wants to try this, you're more than welcome to.
I was also going to invite everyone to the flute specialist booth right by the entrance. It's booth 300. Robert will be there.
That's actually a better idea.
And for the question about the composition, Robert's handwritten compositions, you can look at them at the booth.
Yeah.
And so Robert will be there as long as you have questions, and you can look at his composition there.
Yeah, and Lights in the Sky will be published probably in late October. Right now I'm playing from manuscript. Okay, well, thank you so much. Nothing would make me happier than to find out the music that you play on your Glissando flute. Thank you.